Welcome to the Feel Better, Be Better show. Today, Kate and Nevada will answer your questions and introduce new topics designed to help feel better and be better. These are raw conversations, but they will make a difference.
I'm telling you right now, if you don't do things right, then I'm going to blow my gasket.
We're not even having a show.
That's what the whole show's about. We're literally doing people that blow up and people that don't blow up, and boundaries and issues and mental disorders. Did we go over mental disorders?
Not really. But
No, we probably should. Enjoy the show. We're going to talk about how mean you are.
Pretty mean person.
I mean, how you just, vent your frustrations on players that play for you.
All the time.
Okay.
I'm known as throwing the chair against the dugout wall and screaming and all that good stuff.
I like the people that, beat up the clipboard.
I had a coach once that he got so mad he punched the brick wall in the dugout and his knuckles were all bloody. I'm like, that was probably a really dumb move.
Yeah.
That just hurt you, not us. Then I've had coaches that make us run, tell you hate your life, because that's really productive.
It is.
I mean, so, all kinds of good stuff. And then I have coaches that just, give you the silent treatment, which is almost the worst, because you're like, oh, man.
No, we literally were talking about team discipline, because we're not big on that one. If anything, you might say that's kind of a weak point for us.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of focus more on the desire to play as far as the threat of being in punishment.
Yeah. I think both of us want to give kids the benefit of the doubt and try to think about what they're thinking about and trying to make it an environment where if a kid's really working to put the effort in and play hard, that they don't feel like if they mess up, then they have to sit. And I think that can easily get to a point where certain players do take advantage of it. And you do have to set firm boundaries, because I don't like setting kids or getting on kids, that's not fun. It's not fun for anybody.
Well, we kind of talked about it before. You can yell at a kid, you can beat them down,
Mm-hmm.
you can rip them and try to motivate them, and you will find at that point, you will get them to do what you need them to do for a short period of time. It loses its effectiveness really fast.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's when you just see coaches that step it up, to where you are hitting a brick wall, or, throwing the cooler out and everything like that, or just having kids run to fear the wrath of the coach. But I think me and you kind of focus a little bit more on the other side of that's no, you can do that to get a kid good enough to play in a tournament in 14U. You can do that to kind of get some high school players to play. Man, it ain't going to work at college level. It's not going to work at the pro level. It's not
where they make enough money that they're like, you're not really in charge of me.
Exactly. But it also just turns the game into a job.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want to play. I think the players that make it better are the ones that love to play.
Yeah, well, and a lot of times that gets very much steered towards, we didn't play well, we're going to run.
Yeah.
Instead of, we goofed off at practice, we're going to run. Or, not that running is necessarily the best punishment, but the message becomes, you didn't do well, we are going to run. Not necessarily the reasons why, to where as a player you get so much anxiety about performance as the outcome. Not feeling comfortable being the player that's going to try hard to make a play, and if you mess up, your coach knows that you've worked really hard in practice, you've worked really hard in the game, and physical errors are going to happen. Now, I've had coaches, really good coaches, who were great on the physical errors, and yeah, you need to make the effort, and would get mad if you didn't make the effort, and that was very clearly displayed, and I loved playing for those coaches, but the mental errors were not acceptable, and it's a whole different area to go into. And so those were the coaches I respected the most, because I was like, no, I should know what I'm doing and where I'm going, and if I mess up purely off of going hard after a ball, I know they're not going to rip me a new one and pull me out of the game.
Well, I know my brain always works better when you run me 6 miles in wind sprints. I'm just saying, it's amazing how it doesn't quite correlate.
Yeah.
And I think we're starting to really turn a different page as our players are getting a little older. And I mean, we're working on this one. Like we'll do workouts in the middle of our stuff, and we tend to do the workouts with them. And they can kind of ask, like, "Why are you doing them or whatever?" And I'm like, "Because I want to be more athletic, so I can do more of the athletic stuff." And so I take these very seriously because I want to be stronger, faster, quicker. And it's amazing how some of them catch on and they're like, "Oh," and they start doing them right. And some of them are just like, "I'm not going to do it."
Yeah.
And that's fine. It is okay. Not everybody's going to be an amazing athlete, want to be a peak performance on what they're doing.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things where you got to meet kids where they're at. And until that kid says, "I want to be better, I want to be stronger, I want to be faster," it's going to be hard. You can press them, but you're going to lose all their connection.
Yeah, you can't make them. And, we've seen that with certain players that, they're out there to have fun. And there's nothing innately wrong with that. But at the same time, you got to know your level too. Because, I mean, when we were in rec, yeah, there was a little bit of rewarding for better play, but you still kind of had to play everybody. And now being in more of a competitive setting, those girls who are making that transition, if you want to come out and just have fun with your friends and just be a part of it, like that's great and fine. But at the same time, you're not going to be able to play as much pivotal roles because you're not engaged in what's going on and you're not working hard at practice. And that's just part of the nature of getting better. So it's not meant to be in a mean way, but at the same time, like you said, I can't make you want to work hard. If you want to work hard, I will give you the opportunities to grow and get better on the field. But if you don't want to work hard, why do I want to put you in a key spot and have all the girls who have worked hard look at that and see that message that it doesn't matter?
Yep.
Because we're trying to grow people who want to get better. And if you don't, like, it doesn't necessarily mean there's not a spot for you or a role on the team, but it's not going to be as important of a role maybe as if you came out and tried hard.
Yep. Well, it's kind of where we are defining our boundaries, and we're pretty good at that. I think we keep the message pretty clear. When girls don't want to work and don't want to do extra stuff, it's like, okay, well, I mean, a lot of times I need somebody to be in the position that can throw the ball to the person on a regular basis. I'm going to need somebody that can run fast to be in the outfield. I'm going to need somebody that's going to be quick in the infield and stuff like that.
Catch the ball at first.
So we tell them, we're like, that's why we work these drills, so that way you could be able to have that flexibility. If you don't want that flexibility, that's understandable, but unfortunately you won't be able to play those positions. So we're very kind of like cause and effect. Your choice. If you want to limit yourself to being like play first base only because you can't really throw it and you can't really necessarily run it down or field the ball correctly, that's your call. You better be able to hit hard because you're really limiting your space. And we've talked about that. We had certain girls that made teams, and we were like, I think this girl will make the team. She's not the most amazing player in the world, but she can play every position. She hustles and works hard, and she's fundamentally sound. So it's like, that girl can blossom into something. Somebody who doesn't work really hard and can only play certain positions leaves you with very little options as a coach.
Yeah, there's so many girls that I've told, like, if you want to be the third baseman, okay, that's great, but you're going to get to a point where you go to a team that has a stud third baseman. What do you do? Just sit behind them the whole time, or do you step up and try to learn a new position so you can play? I mean, there's always going to be situations where somebody potentially is going to be better than you at something. And, my mom really preached that in me when I was a kid, that the more positions I knew how to play, even just mentally, even if I never got the opportunity to do them, I should know where everybody's going and what's happening on the field. Because if I can play and be thrown into any position without hardly any practice, a coach will find a way to keep me in the lineup. If I can hit the ball and I know what I'm doing, then I'm not a liability on the field, they will find a spot to put me.
Well, we'll come back on that on a different show. But I mean, how much knowing what the other positions are supposed to do in every sport can impact your ability to do a position better. I mean, so if you know what that position is trying to do, you can set yourself up in another position to make it successful. It makes you look like you know what you're doing. Then you become that supportive player. You may not be the one that fills the stat sheet. You may not be the one that is the one that everybody knows from the outside looking in, but the coach knows, I can't do, the team wouldn't work without this player. Yeah. Because it just, they fill in all the things that aren't on the stat book.
Yep. But going back to a little bit what you hit on earlier with mirroring, I mean, not only do kids pick up better what you are doing versus what you say. So if we're out there doing the things we say to do, it's a lot easier for them to buy in, like, yeah, this is how we do things. You know, it's not just my coaches harping on me about it, but I mean, it's easier. Kids just kind of naturally fall in line with following what they see around them.
Well, it's kind of always that thing that you have like your grandpa that was always sitting around like sitting on the couch with his remote control, smoking a cigarette, going like, "You shouldn't smoke and you should work out." You know,
Go
it's just
play
like,
outside.
do you really listen to that person? I mean, they're basically do what I say, not what I do.
Eat
It
your,
never works.
eat your vegetables
Yeah.
when they have none on their plate. Yeah.
Eat your vegetables while I'm eating cake. Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah.
But I mean, you got to show, you got to prove it. You got to, and that's who kids respect. That's who kids look up to because they do what they're due. They do what they say they're gonna do.
Yeah, but not only that, I mean, we had a clinic this weekend and we had one girl who was struggling with teaching some of the drills, and you and I talked about it. Words usually don't work. If you just explain, like, it's great to explain the why, it's great to explain how, but words to a certain point get lost. If you show them, it goes a lot further, it's easier to pick up. So if we're out there mimicking the drills and like, no, this is how you need to do it, it's a lot easier for kids to see it. It's a lot easier for kids to get the hang of it, and they're trying to mimic the correct way that you're doing it.
Yep. I mean, you see me grab it and put my glove on the opposite hand and act like I'm going to throw left-handed, which I can't at all. But that way they can straight up mirror you because that's how kids pick everything up. That's why there's so many kids that are like, I do this left-handed. Why? Because they had to mirror their parent who was right-handed doing it. If they're not right-handed, they just pick that up because that's how they learned it. So that's mirroring's huge. I want to come back to discipline though. So we're in a phase now where we've got a good group of kids. They're having a good time. They're learning. They're like, somebody really should have videoed it because I mean, from now to what they used to be is insane. But
Yeah.
we're also running into a little bit of discipline problems. It's not necessarily our forte. We're not very regimented.
Well, it always hits about
we're
this point.
Good about hitting our boundaries.
That 6 to 8 months in transition of like, oh, we're getting better, and then they hit that point. It seems like inevitable. You kind of hit that wall where you kind of get some pushback.
Yep. So we unfortunately had to sit a couple of people and actually kind of grind it out on 9 to prove a point. And I think the point was made very clearly.
Yeah.
Because we got thumped by a couple of teams that we should have never been beat by. And then we went toe-to-toe with a team that won the tournament.
Yeah.
And we got beat when we were playing everybody and trying to have this happy-go-lucky scenario. Then we hit single elimination, and we knew we had to make a point. So we went ahead and we're going with the 9 that are working hard, and we went toe-to-toe. And it would have been interesting if they would have came out more confident because we kind of got a deep hole there to begin with and then picked it up late.
Yeah.
So it would have been interesting to see if we would have went in with a little confidence. But then after that, I mean, practices seem to be a little bit more working. We got a couple of girls that are like, what do I got to do? And it's like, unfortunately, sometimes as a coach, you got to make that point.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, I mean, we got to a point where, you know, like a couple of them we were rotating everybody in, but it was done in a way that the ones that weren't working still got the message of like, oh, I'm sitting on the bench more than I want to. But it was in a bad mood that they got that way. And the people around them were like, well, they're still kind of playing and we're not in these games. And like the whole just general demeanor was not where it needed to be, that it was like, usually kids can see it enough that it's not a big enough problem, but it was like, this is not working. So we had to do something very drastic. And, you know, we told them before the game, we told them, listen, you know, we did a flex and a DP to where we could play 10, one in the outfield and one batting, to where they only played half the game. But doing that and pulling the players aside that were the problem ones and being like, listen, this is what the situation is. Like, there was so much more hustling, warming people up when I'm on the bench. There was the girl who, bless her heart, she was just hitting. She's like dialed in, focused, and drove in like 4 or 5 runs in the game. And I mean, it was just, everybody had a more upbeat personality, and it was like, no, we can be in this game. Let's show that we can do this. Let's rally around each other. And it could have gone the other way completely, like it could have. But I was so proud of them for pulling them up and not just like getting so down. But like you said, in practice too, I mean, I had one of the girls beside the bench. She came up after the next practice and she's like, was that better work ethic? Am I doing better like I need to? And it's like, yes, this is what I want from you.
Yeah. Well, and then I also had one this week where I had one of the kids that I instruct who's younger, and I mean, there's some attention stuff there. And And he came from a regular coach that was kind of trying to, hey, we're doing this, type stuff, which is fine. But when I came in, I'm like, let's have fun.
Mm-hmm.
Let's find a way to just have a good time. I want you to want to come back. And we're seeing slow and measurable improvement. I mean, even his mom's like, man, he is hitting it so well. He's throwing it so good. And I'm like, oh yeah, because he wants to. Well, he had kind of a bad night the other night and was really pushing things quite a bit. And he did something he should have done. And I needed to make a point. And that might have been a little harsher than I usually am. I'll completely admit to that one. But I mean, I made the point, set the boundary, and went on. I didn't go throwing stuff around. I didn't go yelling or anything like that. I just said, look, we don't do that. We're not going to do that. And if you do that, you're going to get in trouble. You're lucky you did it with me, and we can just go forward, but don't do that again.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very different it was a different tone. And as soon as it was done, I was like, all right, you want to do this? And we got back into it. 5 minutes later, we were going, and we were not having discipline problems. So, I mean, that again is a prime example of, nope, you went too far. Here's the boundary. You need to stick with your boundary.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing how kids will pick up on that. We almost feel like we can't do that. You just can't go over the top. You've got to be very professional on the fact that here's where the boundary is. You can't go past it. This is where you need to be. The problem you run into is when you go so far over the top, like, you never do this, and then you're creating an argument.
Yeah.
And the arguments never work. But you have to come back after and be like, and now that's settled, we're going forward.
I think that's the hugest thing is, I mean, you see it just with kids in general when you raise kids, is kids like structure and boundary. The parents that are super loose, don't have any boundaries, like, yeah, it might seem fun, but kids don't thrive under that. But on the reverse side, if kids feel like they're bad or they can never do anything right or you're going to be mad at them all the time, they don't do well in that either. But if you can set the boundary and not hold it against them and move on and help them learn where those are to where they can fit in or kind of around that, kids tend to really gravitate towards those people. And while you had to discipline your kid the other night, when you saw him on Saturday, all he wanted to do was sit and talk to you for 30 minutes to an hour. So, I mean, it was clearly a situation where you didn't make him feel like he was a bad kid or that you didn't like him or something like that, to where he felt uncomfortable around you. It was very much like, no, respect that you put that boundary down, but we're still okay.
Yep. I always equate it to, and I know people get mad at this, but I think you see it most in dogs and training and people with dogs in training. Because you know me, you see me around my dog, I don't let him do a whole lot of things. I mean, there's a lot of things that normal people are just like, oh no, you can come up on the bed or you can do whatever. And I'm like, no, we don't do that. You have to get permission and all that kind of stuff, even going up and down stairs, which is insane. And some people would be like, you're so mean to your dog. And I'm like, he seems to do fine with it. And it's not like and I'm not mean about it. No, we don't do that.
No, he knows the expectation.
But I mean, I'm setting the boundaries and we're doing the expectation. And then you have people like, the foster puppy that you had. I mean, it was obvious from day one, whoever had him, well, he just really likes to do this kind of stuff. You could tell. It was so glaringly obvious. But in like 2 weeks, week and a half, he was not doing it anymore because you didn't allow him to do it. It's like, nope, I'm setting the boundary. This is the expectation. But here's the part that's really crazy about that. If you never set a boundary, you never set the expectation, then how do you ever know if you're doing good?
Mm-hmm.
And so what you did for the dog, you're like, no, if you do this, I'm happy. If you do this, I'm upset. So the dog is already learning, like, okay, if I do these type of things, I get rewarded. If I do these type of things, I get punishment. So I stop doing these and I start doing more of these. Sadly, I think it works a lot for kids as well.
It does. I mean, I think the biggest thing is, if you can clearly define those boundaries, it's not a guessing game.
Yep.
Nobody likes to guess what's going on and then have something happen to them afterward. If they can clearly understand, like, okay, I know I'm not going to be, this is not favorable behavior, then they have an idea of like, okay, I know what the repercussions are if I do this behavior. And then they can choose whether they're going to do that or not.
All right, so I'm setting a boundary right now on the end of this show.
Okay.
You good with that one? Or just, and scene. Night!
Thank you for watching. Kate and Nevada hope you've enjoyed this show and found it useful and empowering. If you have any questions or comments, please contact them at Kinetics.com. That's KNETICX.com. They're on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok as well. And please write a review of the show. Kate and Nevada appreciate hearing the feedback, and they welcome your reviews, and your word of mouth will help others learn how to feel better and be better.